Hello everyone, today's poem is 山居秋暝 by Wang Wei. It's one of the very famous mountain, river, and farming fields poem by Wang Wei again. And we can compare this poem with other poems Wang Wei, especially the other two written in the same period when he led a half government life and half hermit life, which means he used to stay in the South Mountain in the villa he built for himself, 辋川别业. And if the government or the emperor has something, they will summon him to the capital city, Chang'an City, which will take roughly 1 day trip during the Tang Dynasty. And when he finished his duty or his task, he will return to his villa in the South Mountain, in the place of Wangchuan. So the other two poems we have introduced in my video is 终南别业 and 陆柴. You can compare these two poems with this poem. So they all shared a very similar situation, as well as the mindset by Wang Wei. And also, if you have further time, you can check the other poems by Wang Wei in different time frames. You can also get to know how is the mindset or the feelings Wang Wei expressed during the different period of time in his lifetime. So basically, this poem shows the very enjoyable life Wang Wei lived in the South Mountain in his villa as a hermit.
山居秋暝，王维。空山新雨后，天气晚来秋。明月松间照，清泉石上流。竹喧归浣女，莲动下渔舟。随意春芳歇，王孙可自留。山居秋暝 the place and the time about this poem. 山居 the villa in the South Mountain. 秋暝 in the autumn season and in the dark night. 明 means it's dark, it's getting dark. It's a very simple poem, so I will go through the wording, the meaning of the wordings very quickly, and then share some of the observations by myself. So from the title, 山居秋暝, the villa in the South Mountain, and at the dark time, or it's getting dark time in the autumn, we know very clearly actually the house in the mountain refers to his villa, 辋川别业, or in another poem, 终南别业. So they all refer to the same house, same place. So most probably the poet Wang Wei himself is standing at the gate somewhere in his villa, or maybe somewhere in his villa, and he look around and then he write down this poem. 空山新雨后，天气晚来秋. 空山 the empty mountain. It's a very frequent words appeared in Wang Wei's poem. So it shows the philosophy or the philosophy thinking of Buddhism that Wang Wei practiced a lot. So he's so deeply influenced, or he practiced the Buddhism. So that from these words you can see that actually in the reality The mountain is full of the creatures or the substances. A mountain can, like the South Mountain, can never be a empty mountain. But in the Buddhism, the philosophy is everything is empty, and in the place of empty, it's everything. So Kongshan actually make the philosophy of Buddhism into the real world, into the real scenic will, to convert from the real scenic will to the philosophy words of Buddhism. So that's the most unique characters of Wang Wei's poem. 新雨后, so it's just after the fresh rains. So it's after rains. So as a person lived in this area for quite some while, especially in my teenage, the autumn time it's endless rains in this area. Maybe it's a little different in Tang Dynasty, but basically the weather or the weather patterns don't change too much. So I would suppose it's days of rains and it just stopped. So you can imagine how the feelings for a person it is. You are kept in house for days because it rains outside endlessly for days. The character 新 which means new or fresh, indicates it's a very delighted moment for the poet. He was locked up for days, and then everything is so fresh and everything is new when he just stepped out of his house. 天气晚来秋, so the weather is in the autumn's weather, and it's late. So the late normally is a negative word. So for the first pair of sentences, make the contrast is half of the delighted mind of the poet himself by the word new, fresh, and on the other hand, the weather is late. That's the common sense for most of the Chinese. The late is always not a good thing. 明月松间照，清泉石上流. So the second pair of sentences, the bright moon is shining between the pine woods. The 清泉, the crystal clear spring is flowing on the rocks. So it's such fresh, crystal, and delighted situations. Even it's dark, but we have the bright moon. So the poet can see all the joyful scenario surrounded surrounded his house. 竹喧归浣女，莲动下渔舟. So this pair of sentences written in the converse. So it should be like this. The normal sequence, the wording should be like 浣女归竹喧. 浣女, the woman who's washing the clothes along the spring, along the creeks. So that's the very common situation even 20 or 30 years ago in the countryside of China, but it's hardly to see today. So the women in the countryside, they always wash the clothes upon a pond or upon the river side. So let's come back to this sentence again. So the normal sentence is the woman who is washing the clothes. They are coming back home because it's dark. and the bamboo forest make loud noise, make loud laughings. So here actually has two things, writing techniques. One, he convert the sequence of the wordings, and secondly, he treat the bamboo trees as humans, because bamboo never laughed, never make noises. But here, because the delightment, the joyful situations, the bamboo laughed very loudly, not to say the woman who is coming back from the clothes washing. And also, when we're reading this sentence, it's quite unique, because with the normal sequence, the sentences becomes quite simple and plain, straightforward. So it's nothing special, because you are seeing the very natural way. The woman is coming back, and they are laughing, and they make the bamboo seems laughing. And with the writing, with this sentence by Wang Wei, 竹喧, so you actually is crushed by the sound of the bamboo laughings. And also this gives you more curiosity to read further. What make the bamboo forest laughing? And also some of the sound reflects, because previous sentences or descriptions is all about the static, silent, picturesque descriptions. And from this sentence, we heard the sound of the laughing. Writing the sound is quite unique in classic Chinese poetry, especially since the Tang Dynasty. This makes the poems more flavored and with more aspects and with more angles. And also the sound make the description of the sound in a poem makes this poem actually more dynamic. So the same technique applied to the second half, 莲动下渔舟. So the normal sequence of the sentence is 渔舟下莲动. So the fishing boat is coming downstream, and the lotus leaves or lotus flowers is moving or be moved by the fishing boat. And Wang Wei reversed the sequence again, and because the lotus flowers moved, that's a dynamic situation, and which will very easily keep track or keep the focus of the readers, and that also make some of the curiosity what make the lotus leaves or lotus flowers moved, because of the fishing boat. So here, as far as we have the another poem, Jiangnan, the lotus and fishing or fishing boat or fish, these two terms normally for a Chinese very easily arouse us to think about that poems. And finally, the lotus plus fish always imply something with the love affairs between men and women. And here it also has such sort of the implications, and which but the poet Wang Wei here doesn't want to go further about that part. As far as we take the poem as a whole, the first 6 sentences are all describing the lively, enjoyable life in the countryside around his villa in the South Mountains, in the place of 望穿. So that's all about enjoyable lives, the very beautiful scenic views, the fresh air, the fresh earth after the days of rains, and it's getting cooler and cooler because it's autumn, and the bright moons, the pine woods, the crystal clear spring rushing the rocks, and also the lively villagers, the beautiful girls from the back from the washing clothes, and the bamboo forests, the lotus flowers, the fishing boats. It's all lively, very enjoyable countryside life. So that's basically the first 6 sentences about. That's a wonderful hermit life, isn't it? 随意春芳歇，王孙可自留. Okay, the last pair of sentences is the focal point of this poem, because if all the sentences about the lively, enjoyable country life, that poem is not a very good poem, because there's no spiritual things, or there's no willingness expressed. He just enjoyed the country life and nothing else. As far as we know, 诗言志, the poem is always about to express his feelings, especially his life goals. So the last 2 sentences that tells out what the life goals Wang Wei has at the moment. 随意春芳歇. It doesn't matter the beautiful spring has gone, because in a common sense, the autumn is not a good season, and the best season is the spring. Everything is growing, is prosperous. In the autumn times, everything is near to its end. The end is winter. The plant, the animals, most of them either go to sleep or dead. So the autumn, because of the changing of the weather in the autumn, it very easily make the Chinese feel sad, because autumn is mainly associated with the ending or death. But in this poem, especially in the first 6 sentences, the poet described a very abnormal or something contrast to the common sense of a Chinese. The autumn is so beautiful, so enjoyable life. And so thus he gave the conclusion, it doesn't matter the beautiful spring has gone. I have the enjoyable autumn as well. And the last sentence, 王孙可自留. Wang Sun, the son or the grandson of the king, they certainly can stay here in this season, in this place. So the Wang Sun, the son or the grandson of the king, used to be the very specific terms to refer to the nobles. And later on, the people with senior positions or the people well educated, the celebrities, they also treat themselves as Wang Sun. So here, this actually is the term Wang Wei refers to himself. First thing first, he was with a very high-ranking position for the moment, and also he's the celebrities of the time, so he's well qualified to call himself as Wang Sun. And Wang Sun 可自留 means certainly I should stay here in this autumn season, in this wild place in the South Mountains. The last sentence is also a quotation to the ancient literature, which is 王孙兮归来，山中兮不可以久留. The nobles, you should come back from the mountains. You shouldn't stay long in the mountains because you have the duties. You have the duties to serve the country. And here, Wang Wei borrowed the terms and the sentence patterns from that classic ancient literature, but he used another way. I can stay, which means I would like to be a hermit rather to go back to the central government to dealing with the political stuff. So here you can see, if without the last two sentences, if it's a purely picturesque poems describing the scenic views, this type of poems would be treated by the Chinese mind as a very normal poems because the basic elements or the focal point of a poem is 实言志. He should express his feeling or his willingness. And with the last two sentences, Wang Wei clearly point out, I want stay away from the political stuff. I want to be a hermit, even it's not so praised by the majority peoples, by the majority of the celebrities, but it's still a choices, a rational choices for the people, well-educated people or noble peoples. So when we compare the poems with Wang Wei, Du Fu, though even these two was so praised for their excellent writing techniques, their creativity, and their observations, unique observations. But for the focal point, 诗言志, even till today, the mainstream opinion is that the Du Fu's poem is a little bit better than Wang Wei's, because from the aspect or from the angles of 诗言志 to express feelings and willingness, Du Fu is much more excellent. In the most famous poems in Du Fu's, the feelings or the thinkings is always the careness about the poor people, about the fate of the country. That's valued the most by the classic Chinese societies or by the classic Chinese scholars. Okay, that's for today, and bye-bye.